News, the first news bulletin on the Joy News channel with me, Sweetie Abochi. Details now. The government is pushing back against the Save the Judiciary protest, defending its decision to investigate petitions seeking the removal of Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo. Officials claim the process is constitutional and necessary for judicial accountability. However, the NPP and its allies remain resolute, warning that their protests will intensify unless the petitions are withdrawn and the judiciary's integrity is protected. They accuse government of pursuing a political agenda to pave way for former President John Mahama's return or current President John Mahama's third term. We'll tell you more in this report.
It's a bit chaotic. Oh, police,
the atmosphere is charged outside the Supreme Court complex as protesters led by the NPP and allied political parties demand an immediate halt to the process of removing Chief Justice Gertrude Torkornoo. The protesters submitted petitions to the Judiciary, Parliament and the Presidency, warning of more actions if their demands are not met. This protest follows a determination that 3 separate petitions submitted to the presidency establish a prima facie case for the Chief Justice removal. But the NPP is pushing back hard.
We cannot allow John Mahama to politicize our democracy. And they should know that whoever is elected as the president will go with their CJ. And whoever is elected, they will come with their CJ and go with their CJ.
After minutes of chaos and a struggle to squeeze through the single entrance, the protesters made their first stop at the judiciary where they submitted their petition. Minority Leader Afenyo-Markin urged the judiciary to consider a nationwide sit-down strike.
Let your conscience prick you so that you would also be the next to protest and do a sit-down strike. Because it has happened before when Georgina Wood came under attack. Jusak rose to her defense and that stopped that amongst government.
The protest then moved to Parliament, where the group was received by the Clerk of Parliament.
It is tyranny cloaked in the robes of democracy. His every gesture speaks to a sinister agenda to break the constitution and amend it and prolong his grip on power, abetted by a judiciary he is desperate to capture. In other words, the president is looking forward to using the judiciary for a third term.
Finally, the protesters made their way to the Jubilee House, facing resistance in accessing the inner perimeter. Afenyo-Markin expressed hope that the presidency would give their petition the serious attention it deserves.
We believe that what is happening is not good for us. This issue of you do me, I do you. There must be an end to retaliatory politics. We hope that it shall receive the needed support for the Chief Justice to go back to her office and do her work.
But these remarks drew a sharp response from Deputy Chief of Staff Stan Dogbe.
That in itself is a very strong message about the democracy that President Mahama wants to instill in our dear country. If it were the case like this over the past 8 years, I'm sure that the retaliatory politics that you talk about wouldn't have been the case. You referencing retaliatory politics is an admission.
Meanwhile, lawyer Justice Abdulai has described the NPP's argument as more political than legal. He maintains that President Mahama has neither violated the Constitution nor breached any legal procedures regarding the suspension of the Chief Justice, and he spoke with Elton Brobe on The Pulse.
In fairness, I find the arguments made by some of my very good friends, and when I say good friends, some are even my brothers, on the NPP side as more political than legal. And to that extent, it's difficult to engage in that kind of debate. Because I've called several, I've thrown this question to any lawyer in Ghana, whether NPP or NDC, to point out a single provision in the Constitution that has been violated by the president. Because I have gone out there on public to have said, and I still affirm that position, that from the moment the petition was served on the president till this very minute that we are speaking, there has not been any step that has been taken by the president that I see offends any provisions in the Constitution. And so whoever, whether a body of association, group of persons, or whatever the institution or individual may be, I would like a single provision to be pointed out that sins against the conduct either by the president or the Council of State or the two of them combined in relation to the potential removal of the Chief Justice. Nobody has so far been able to point out anything. The only thing you keep hearing is about exercising of discretionary power,
right,
which has not been provided for in the, as far as, of course, some of my colleagues are concerned, that there ought to be a regulation running that executive exercise of judicial power. And I have pointed at several judicial authorities which affirms that you cannot do that to the executive because the executive exercises both political power and administrative power.
Now, President John Dramani Mahama has given his appointees who failed to declare their assets by March 31st deadline until May the 7th to comply, or they will be dismissed from office. Those who missed the deadline will also forfeit 3 months' salaries, which will be donated to the Mahama Cares Initiative, a medical trust fund supporting healthcare development. President Mahama unveiled a new code of conduct for government appointees, prohibiting the acceptance of gifts and favors from individuals or entities with interest in government decisions. Sanctions for non-compliance range from public apologies to dismissal. Now, Presidential Affairs correspondent Maxwell Agbagba tells us more in this report.
Present at the event were senior government officials and appointees. President Mahama used the occasion to outline a new code of conduct which clearly defines how government appointees are expected to carry themselves in office. In his speech, the president issued a strong warning that any appointee who fails to declare their assets by Wednesday, May 7, 2025, should consider themselves automatically dismissed. In addition to dismissal, such individuals have already forfeited 3 months of their salaries.
For all those who are appointed or nominated before 31st March 2025 and failed to meet the deadline, you are to forfeit 3 months of salary to be donated to the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, named after me, Mahama Cares. In addition to 1 month's salary that I've asked all appointees to donate to the Mahama Cares Trust Fund. So it means that those who omitted to declare assets by the date, you are paying 4 months' salary to Mahama Cares. However, if by close of day, Wednesday, 7th May 2025, any of you still fails to declare your assets, count yourself automatically dismissed.
As outlined in the new code of conduct, appointees are strictly prohibited from accepting gifts or favors, especially from individuals or entities with vested interest in government decisions. In line with this, the presidency disclosed that President Mahama had received 2 cars as gifts, which he has since donated to the state.
We all know our cultural fondness for gifts, but we must now draw a clear line between appreciation and influence. Appointees are prohibited from accepting gifts or favors, especially from companies or individuals with interest in governmental decisions. If a gift is received during an official engagement and its estimated value exceeds 20,000 Ghana cedis, it must be declared. And upon leaving office, the gift must be surrendered unless expressly permitted to retain it by the president. As for hampers and gift items, no government funds, including internally generated funds, are to be used to purchase or distribute hampers.
President Mahama further stated that no political appointees are allowed to purchase state assets, including land, vehicles, or shares, directly or indirectly. He emphasized that any appointee who violates this directive will be dismissed.
Prohibition on purchasing state assets. No political appointee under this administration is permitted to purchase state assets, whether land, vehicles, shares, or buildings, directly or indirectly. If you attempt to do so and you are found out, your appointment will be terminated.
The president concluded by outlining a range of punitive measures for violations of the code, from a public apology to outright dismissal. He stressed that there will be no sacred cows under his administration. Every appointee will be held accountable.
Sanctions for violation. The code sets out consequences for breach, public apology, from public apology to reprimand, to suspension, to resignation, or ultimately termination. Let me assure you that these sanctions are not cosmetic, they will be enforced. And I will not hesitate to act firmly and decisively, no matter who is involved.
Moving on, the livelihoods of thousands of traders are hanging by the thread at the KJTR market in Kumasi as the trading center continues to grapple with faulty firefighting installations and traders' blatant disregard for safety precautions. Fire cabinets, sprinklers, smoke detectors implanted at the market have yet to find their purposeful use, even after a major fire razed at least 20 shops. In today's episode of our Breaking the Fire Cycle series, my colleague Emmanuel Bright-Kweku visited the market, which is currently without fire insurance due to its poor fire protection infrastructure, and tells us the story from there.
On March 15, 2023, the usual trading at the KJTR market had neared its conclusion until a major fire devastation tore through portions of the market. Traders left helpless as they escaped the fire scene without even looking back to salvage their goods. The market, which supposedly had a better fire system, failed to save the millions of items contained in shops caught up in the blaze. Two years after the incident, the traders are yet to have their lives back to normalcy. Nathaniel Bwamponsim leads the KJTR fire victims.
I operated 3 shops. My family depends on me. And now I'm not working for like 2 years. You know, it's not easy. The people at home who even call you to also ask you money. Being the leader of the fire victims, at times you have to go to an extent of asking people money just to support. And that is so bad. That is not the life we used to live. We were okay, if not this fire incident.
The affected shops continue to sit in ruins, now a terrible sight of filth and human waste.
There are several recommendations for this place to be restored back to life. But 2 years down the line, it is an eyesore. It is now engulfed in filth. And I must say that this place, we understand, trickles with some sewage coming from upstairs. And the traders here are helpless. They are hoping that something could be done urgently to restore this place.
Sometimes whenever I come to this scene, it makes me feel like crying because I put myself in the shoes of my colleague traders who are applying their trade here.
The KJTR market is Ghana's largest and ultra-modern market, serving as a one-stop facility for various goods and transport services. The $200 million market center houses over 8,000 stalls and shops. After the fire devastation, the traders had hoped the new market would be insulated against another blaze, but it still stands without a standard life and property protection equipment. The network of over 100 sprinklers and smoke detectors on the market ceiling are yet to find their purpose. Fire cabinets at the markets have gathered dust and are now in a deplorable state with its delivery holes punctured. Nana Akwesi Prempe is the president of the Federation of KJTR Traders Association.
The entire firefighting system within the market is suspect with regard to what was originally implanted into the market. We will say it's, let's say, 3 over 10. We as traders, we know that if it gets to the situation where we are supposed to fund for it, why not? After all, they will be protecting our wares for us. So we would have paid for it.
The sprinklers at the markets are defective, but the market has naturally found its way to rain drops of water to probably douse the next fire that may erupt. But the water is a mixture of liquid waste running through plastic pipes.
every day.
See how the water is dripping onto my goods. We have fetched 10 basins of this water. Every time it drips. Though the market has its structural deficits, the conduct of some traders makes the place a riskier scene for fire emergencies.
So ideally, this is to serve as one of the emergency assembly points here at the KJT market. But as you can see on your shots now, on both sides, you can see some traders occupying this alleyway. And you can imagine what could happen in case there is a fire outbreak here at the KJT market.
If there was a system that could detect the smoke, they could have easily doused the fire. Even the fire extinguishers are faulty. The market's only fire station is yet to be completed after developing wall cracks as the market continues to experience pockets of fire outbreaks. The poor fire infrastructure at the market is shying away insurance companies.
And that also exposes this market. Now, 2 years down the line, there is no fire certificate, meaning there is no insurance policy covering this market. And per the LI, is it 2174, Ghana National Fire Service LI, it is mandated on Ghana National Fire Service that if a commercial facility is not fire worthy, they should close this down.
There have been several recommendations on the fire situation at the markets, but they seem to have fallen on deaf ears. A stitch in time, they say, saves 9. For Joy News, my name is Emmanuel Bright Kweku.
Let's stay on fire a tad bit longer because the Ghana National Fire Service says poor access to some markets is hampering emergency response efforts, with narrow roads, blocked pathways and congestion posing major challenges. So far, 5 markets have been gutted by fire, with authorities citing limited accessibility as a key factor hindering timely response. Central Regional Commander ACFO Mary Atiga Mensah is, however, urging city authorities to take urgent steps to address these challenges. She made the remarks during a simulation exercise in Cape Coast to mark this year's International Firefighters Day.
While victims of fire incidences continue to mourn their losses, the Ghana National Fire Service also mourns its fallen servicemen. During a simulation exercise by the Central Regional Command of the Ghana National Fire Service at the Nkamfa Station and the Kotokraba Market in Cape Coast to mark International Firefighters Day, the Central Regional Commander of the service, ACFO Mary Atiga Mensah, shared that this year's celebration is to honor fallen fire heroes who died in the line of service, while highlighting the reason behind the simulation exercise.
Today we are doing this for the public to know that our strength. We are ready for any eventuality, to inform the public about our readiness and our job. We rescue, our job is when there is accident, fire service is the point of call, to come and assess the victims. When there is a need, they will call the ambulance. They will rescue the victims. And even flood, fire service, when there is flood, when you call us, we rescue the people. So Ghana National Fire Service, our work is not only firefighting, but we do a lot of things.
In 2025, several markets in the country have been gutted by fire, with January alone recording 5 Benz market incidences. The extent of these fires has been largely blamed on accessibility by the fire service, a challenge ACFO Atiga Mensah mentioned while touring the Kotokraba market.
You know, nowadays there's a lot of fire outbreaks in the market, and Kotokraba is the biggest market in the region. So we don't want it to be like when there's fire, we'll not be able to extinguish it on time. But when we were coming, we found it difficult to enter the market because of traffic, and the drivers, they were not ready to give us way, and I have to calm down and even be beating some of the cars for us to give us a way to enter the place. So we are pleading with the authorities, especially the municipal assembly, to come in to help us to remove those on the road so that in case of emergency, we will reach the place at a time and do our job efficiently and effectively at a shortest possible time. So we need sponsors. If we have a lot of sponsors who can do it every month, we are pleading with the NGOs and the stakeholders to assist us so that we'll be able to do it. We'll be doing these exercises every month or every 3 months.
From Cape Coast, Abigail Lesel-Nkoma reports for Joy News.
Break. On that note, handing you to Mr. Benjamin Akakpo. He serves you business updates.
Time now for our business updates. Let's get right into our first story for the day. Now, banking consultant Dr. Richmond Etiahene has disclosed that most state banks are struggling from non-performing loans due to government's inability to pay loans acquired to construct roads. He expressed worry that the situation could bring some state banks on their knees if immediate steps were not taken to reverse the trend. He spoke to Joy Business after Fitch Solutions' recent publications, which showed that Ghana's banking sector was vulnerable with a high non-performing loan ratio of 21.8% and a capital adequacy ratio of 14%.
You'll be just trying to cover your iniquities. You need to address it. As I've said, you need to address it. It happened in 2010. And with the assistance of IMF, they were able to have a repayment plan for the banks. And that also supported the bank. That brought the non-performing in 2014, 11%. And ever since, contracts are being awarded here and there without actually thinking the impacts on the non-performing of the banks. So until the government, and I believe that this is a very good advice for the government, she should sit down with the road minister, the energy minister, the banking sector, and then give them a schedule of repayment so that it can take us about a year or two. I know the road is about close to 35 billion according to IMF, and the World Bank said the energy is 2.3 billion. If you add them all, at least it's close to be 70 billion. You can begin to do a structured payment to the banks that will reduce the non-performing and improve liquid solvency. Until we do that, I have said consistently, the banking sector is not the best, especially for the Ghanaian banks and the Ghanaian, including the state bank, the private sector banks and the state banks. They are not doing very well at all.
Well, from there, let's head into our commodities exchange now. And that's it, our business updates done and dusted for the morning. And I'm handing over to Ajoba, Sweetie Abochi. Oh, I forgot the Christiana.
Mr. Akakpo, thank you very much for serving us business updates. And that wraps up the AM News Bulletin on the AM show. Of course, now the conversations begin, starting with the news review. Stay with us. We'll be right back on your screens.